The feast of the Pentecost, liturgically, is a day that we remember the beginning of the movement or the journey of the church. But at the same time, when you read into the Gospels, we can see that it was a day of tremendous transformation of the disciples of Jesus who were living frightened or scared of the religious and political leadership of that time, who destroyed the mission and the life of Jesus, their master. So it was a day of transformation for them. So therefore, it is important that we reflect on how did it become a truly and profoundly a transformation of these individuals, which led to a transformation of a community, and which eventually was able to cause the transformation of the world in some way or the other. My dear friends, when we talk about the feast of the Holy Spirit, we normally have this notion that Spirit is something that we do not fully understand. Why? Because we are so much influenced by the opposite of spirit, that is matter, the physical reality. The way we understand the physical reality determines the way we understand the movement and the life of the Spirit. Now, we have all lived in a time where our understanding of material reality was so much influenced by Newtonian physics. Now, what is Newtonian physics? Newtonian physics teaches us or claims that the foundational element of this entire universe, the atom, the protons, the electrons, the nucleus, are independent entities which do not destroy each other, which do not transform each other, which coexist with each other. So therefore, Newtonian physics has this idea that material reality is without life, and therefore spirit is something that is different, that is non-material, non-physical, but it gives another form of life, another way of life. That is how we understand spirit in the context of Newtonian physical reality or physical explanations of Newtonian reality. But my dear friends, you and I, whether we like it or not, we live in the 21st century where the development of science, especially the understanding of the physical reality, the material reality, is now explained or understood through Albert Einstein's theory of relativity, or in other words, the discoveries of quantum physics. What do these new sciences talk about material reality? In the discipline of quantum physics, matter, or what is physical, is not understood as not having life within, but there is a tremendous amount of the presence of energy. So much so that it says that there is a duality between the particle, that is the material, with the wave, which is the energy. So in other words, in simple terms, quantum physics tell us that there is not so much matter, there is also spirit within matter, within physical reality. When you try to understand spirit as against the matter, which is what the quantum mechanics or quantum physics teach us, my dear friends, our entire understanding of the Spirit of God also has to take a new turn. In the history of the church, there is a tremendously intellectual, a famous scientist who lived in the last century, a Jesuit priest, Teilhard de Chardin. He was a man who was able to look at material reality from a very scientific point of view and come out and say a new understanding of the spirit, the energy, the Spirit of God which is within the material reality. Father Teilhard de Chardin was a paleontologist. He was a man who studied soil, fossils, and here he comes and says, especially in his writings after his scientific discoveries, he says that what is foundational in the material reality, what is so true about what is physically present to us as matter, has what he calls presence of consciousness. So now, Father Teilhard de Chardin, when he talks about the Spirit of God, he has a wider, a greater, a comprehensive knowledge, a comprehensively profound understanding of the Spirit of God. So therefore, in the modern world, especially being exposed to the discoveries of physics, quantum field theories, we as believers, we need to draw from this knowledge and try to understand what Spirit of God means for us in terms of what the sciences have taught us. Now, Father Teilhard de Chardin's theory is so very well explained by a contemporarily famous author, Ilia Telio, in her book, Making All Things New, Catholicity, Cosmology, and Consciousness. In her writings, she refers to Father Teilhard de Chardin and says that in the modern times, in the 21st century, the Spirit of God is to be understood as the presence of consciousness in the human person as well as consciousness in the entire created reality, entire cosmology. There is consciousness. My dear friends, having consciousness means to be alive to yourself from within, to understand that you are not just only a material body, that we are all spiritual beings. That is why the great psychologist of the last century, Carl Jung, he has studied, having studied men and women of his time, and studying and trying to understand men and women, he says, we are spiritual beings who have a human experience, and we are not so much human beings with spiritual experiences. Mark these words. We are not human beings with spiritual experiences, but we are spiritual beings with human experiences. Now, if we try to understand that God's Spirit is in us because and through our presence or our aliveness to the world, aliveness to myself, aliveness to what is around us, there the Spirit of God can become truly a transformative experience as it was for the disciples of Christ. Because even when you read the Gospels, we can see that the disciples were men and women, ordinary men and women, who were becoming more and more conscious of the fact that Jesus, who was their master, who was truly conscious of his calling from his own Father, conscious of his mission to his own people, conscious of the fact that he was returning to the Father, and through that consciousness, they became alive to the reality of resurrection. So, for you and for me, it is important to be inspired by the Spirit, is to be inspired or becoming alive to our own inner consciousness. My dear friends, when we try to understand this, it is very important that most of us as human beings, we live our lives without being conscious to many things. For example, how many of us do ask the question from within our own inner self, why am I in this world today? What is the purpose for my journey on this earth? Why is it that I am born in this country? Why is it that I am born in my family? Why is it that I am born in this time where we are going through this pandemic? The absence of consciousness of our own existence is one of the key problems of humanity. In that sense, my dear friends, not only that we are called to be conscious of our own self, but also to be conscious about the entire collective, the community around, the universe around us, the environment around us. Consciousness is at the core, at the center of our journey into true transformation. Talking about transformation of the world, my dear friends, there is this great saying, an ounce of consciousness is greater than tons of creativity. In terms of what is happening in the world today, the world has become so creative. Men and women have become tremendously creative. And that is why we have Facebook, we have WhatsApp, we have internet connections. There is creativity, but there is serious lack of consciousness. Why? We only have to see how the creativity of our modern times has created such disparity of wealth. The owner of Facebook, the creator of Microsoft, the discoverers of all kinds of technological development have become awfully and brilliantly rich at the expense of majority of the people who have become poorer. My dear friends, true transformation happens to individuals when they become conscious of their own life, of their own responsibilities, or their own calling from within themselves to do whatever that the Spirit of God is moving us to do for His own world, for His own creation. And at the same time, to be collectively conscious, to always remember, here I am in this life only for a period of time. What do I do for the betterment of the collective, the larger reality, the community that is around us, so that we become true agents of transformation, which is to be inspired by the Spirit of God. Amen.